Were you born in California?
Yeah, I was born in Glendale and actually pretty much raised in Burbank. I
Okay.
went to high school in Burbank and grew up there.
And
So Burbank's kind of a funny place because there's so many studios there, but at the same time, when I was growing up, we only had one movie theater, and when that burned down, we had none.
oh,
So it's kind of a little funny hick town right in the middle of the big city.
right. And after, like, immediately after you graduated high school, did you just want to? You were just always interested in trying to pursue acting?
No. Um, I'm the accidental actress.
Oh,
So I was going to take a gap year
hmm.
after high school and just kind of keep working, save some money. And I was probably going to go into veterinary school
Oh,
for my BS to eventually go into veterinary school. And I was dating a guy at the time who was interested in becoming a stunt person. And this is just probably a few weeks after I graduated high school. And he called me up and said, bring a pretty dress and come down here right now. He was in Griffith Park. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, they need somebody for a silent bit and they'll pay you. And I'm like, okay. So I went down to the set and he was working as a stand-in for somebody, I don't remember who. And he introduced me to one of the ADs who introduced me to somebody else, who introduced me to somebody else. And I put on my dress and did a little silent bit for the movie Zapped.
oh,
And they paid me like $250 for just a couple hours. And I was like, yes! Not having a clue as to, being one of the most difficult industries you can be in.
right.
And I decided to take my gap year and goof off and see what would happen with acting. And that led to about a year of, doing a lot of odd jobs and just, whatever I could to survive. I had moved out when I was 17. I moved in with a couple of roommates. And kind of one thing led to another, just little tiny jobs here and there. And doing things like working at the AFI festival for a production company, handing out flyers and promoting the film, little things like that. I ended up working as a hostess for a party, introducing a new agency. They were called The Company. And I went there, was waiting my little heart out, and somebody there was interested in auditioning me for a film. And I was like, well, their agents talked to them.
Oh,
So they ended up bringing me on. And within a few months after that, I got my first job, which was TJ Hooker,
yep.
which was just a couple of lines, and then I died.
Hmm.
But I didn't really realize how difficult the industry was, and it took me quite a long time to actually start to learn my craft too. But I was fortunate that by the time I actually did start working, I had turned 18, but I still looked very young.
Yep.
And that they want to hire people who look underage but are 18 or over, because that way they don't have to do the school. There's so many things that they don't have to worry about.
Right. And
So
I
it was
know,
a total accident that I got into acting.
right. And it says that your second role was in the movie Chained Heat.
Yeah, again, right over the credits, I die.
Mm.
Yeah, my first two roles were all about like dying right away, and then the credits roll over my dead body.
And I guess would technically the first bigger role you got was in that football movie with Helen Hunt?
Well, in between those, so I'm trying to think. There was actually a Mother's Day special on NBC that for some reason like isn't sitting in all the archives everywhere. And it was called Sunday Funnies.
Okay.
And it was a fantastic cast. Lonnie Anderson actually hosted the whole thing, and it was pretty much a variety show with all these characters out of the Sunday Funnies paper.
Oh, yeah.
So I was Honey from Hagar the Horrible, and got to work with some incredible people. Dick Butkus was Tank McNamara.
Oh.
And it was a really fun show to do. And then directly following that, I moved to New York and was on Otherworld, the soap opera. And then coming back from that, actually directly coming back from that was Making the Grade. It was not too long. Oh, like a bunch of episodics here, there, and everywhere. And then, so probably Making the Grade would be the first role where I had some kind of a starring or co-starring role.
Was that kind of a long audition process for that movie?
No. Like I said, I had the weirdest career ever. No, they called me in and just really talked to me, and I did like a little couple lines reading. They were already out in Memphis filming, and I think maybe they sent Dorian some tape, and then I flew out there within a couple days.
Okay.
So it was this kind of crazy turnaround of just up and running off and doing the show. That's probably, after that is when I probably started actually studying acting and learning some craft. And I was very fortunate that I just had the work really did roll in very regularly. And so I didn't have to go through any of the kind of starving actor phase. Right. And I think that the most important thing that, like, the goals that I set for myself and what I really felt was important was actually doing the job of it, is to, I made sure, as I was trying to learn the craft a little bit better, but without that, I was absolutely certain. I always knew my lines. I was always on time. I was always, a good citizen on the set, as far as being friendly and upbeat and just hitting my marks, doing my job. Yeah. And that was so important to me. And that was actually, commented on quite a bit, because this was in the middle of the 80s, and there were really a lot of brats out there. Young actors who were just doing too many drugs and screwing around and thought that they were, God's gift to the world. And I think there's always that to some extent, but I think that a lot of people were just very glad to have somebody walk on who's, sober, doing their job, knows their lines, and just the mechanics were all there.
Right. And so with Making the Grade, did you immediately get along with Judd?
Judd and I fought like cats and dogs, but in the best way.
Oh.
No, he was, we had just a fabulous relationship, but we were known for being very snarky with each other, but not in any way of a cruel or derogatory way. It was just kind of the fun of our relationship was this very, very, I don't know, just kind of bantering. But we hung out constantly together and with that same snarky. And he actually remains a friend today.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
he's a very sweet man.
yeah, when you were working on that movie too, did you ever kind of get a sense that it would become this sort of cult movie, like it would have a big following?
No, I think that, you know, it's kind of funny because I think that when you're working, you're just trying to get through from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a lot of times there's a lot of there's a lot of tribulation in the way. And I'm not saying tribulation like there's problems on the set, but so many people glamorize the film industry, and it's excruciatingly long hours.
Yeah.
It's very, very often very poor conditions. And meaning, so like we're doing a nice spring day out, you know, it's supposed to be a beautiful spring day, and it's, you know, 15 degrees and the wind is howling.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to stand there in your little light shirt and, you know, grab a cup of ice and chew on it right before the cameras roll, so you don't have fog steaming out of your mouth from the cold, because it's supposed to be summer, or in some cases where it's supposed to be winter and they have all this fake snow on the ground and it's 112 degrees out and you're in a parka.
Yeah.
And so I think it's pretty, I never really thought about how something was going to turn out, you know, other than just day to day doing my best. And also, since everything is almost always, with rare exceptions, always filmed piecemeal.
Yeah.
So the very first scene that Judd and I did together was the very last scene in the film, where we drive off into the sunset. So it's kind of jumping into it. And I literally met him, you know, 2 hours before when we did that scene, because I flew in and then went straight to the set.
Yeah.
So it was crazy. It was really fun. That was a fun show to do. Funny cast, great crew, really nice people.
It seemed like the same year, it seemed like Love Lines was a really fun movie to be a part of also.
Yeah, Love Lines was a little tougher. Love Lines I was signed on to without reading the script, so I didn't really know what it was all about when I got there. And it was all right. There was some, it was deep in the days of sexism, let's say, in the film industry. And there could be a few hashtag Me Too's that came out of that particular show.
Oh.
But all in all, the actors, really, really good group of people. We had a lot of fun.
And did you have to do your own singing for that?
No, all of that was pre-recorded.
Oh, okay. And I was also curious, in that same period in the middle of the 80s, did you get a chance to audition for anything, like any huge movies that became huge and like iconic?
Oh yeah. 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 Especially right after Shattered Innocence came out, I was going on a lot of really incredible films. One of the problems was that that was right as the writer's strike started.
Oh.
And so everything pretty much shut down for quite a while. But no, over time, oh my gosh, probably the most iconic and one of the more successful actresses over quite a long time who got the role was I was down to the wire for Princess Bride.
Wow.
And Robin got it, and I have to tell you, I couldn't have done what she did. I mean, she was so right. She was so amazing, and yeah, what a great job. And it's so fun to see her, like, her career just keep going and going, and she's a rock star.
Right. With that movie, or with that instance, was that the main scenario where you came really close to getting something?
I mean, there were, you know, life was pretty much, if I wasn't working, I was auditioning. So, I mean, yeah, there were so many, but that was definitely probably the closest in my heart to, like, if I would have wanted to do any movie, that would have been, you know, something that I could, because that happens to be a movie that I do like watching over and over again. I've showed my kids a bunch, and
Right.
and it's just so epic in so many ways. And so that would probably be if I could have had any of my wishes come true, it would have been that one.
Mm-hmm. And then on the opposite side of that same kind of question, was there anything that you turned down that you wished that you didn't?
I don't think so. The only thing that was really annoying financially was it seemed like every time they called me to book me for a national commercial, which is like the big bucks, is I had gotten some episodic, you know, guest starring in some episodic, which was not the big bucks. And it's like, oh man, it would have been so nice to have had the commercial just for the money.
Right.
You know, whereas yet another guest starring role it's nice, but you can only do so many a year. And it just seemed like every time they wanted to call and book me for a commercial, I already had some kind of a guest starring role lined up. But it would have been nice to have the extra bucks.
Right. And I guess since you were just mentioning that too, do you have a favorite TV show that you were a part of when it comes to just episodic roles?
I think that one of my very, very favorite roles, and it's, I haven't seen it since it came out, and it was, but I really liked the job I did in it, was Private Eye.
Oh, okay.
And that was, there were a lot of things going on with that. I felt like I was finally getting my craft together, number one. And number two, I was kind of right at the point where I was wondering if I was going to continue on in the industry.
Oh.
And because we had come out of the writer's strike, and the entire industry was so depressed for so many months, it was also kind of my proving to myself that I could get back into the swing of everything. So I needed to not, because I had been thinking about leaving for a while, and I needed to not leave because the writer's strike beat me down. I needed to leave, like, starting to work again.
Right.
So I think that was definitely a big part of my psyche at the time.
And what about with when you got Otherworld?
Otherworld was so much fun. Otherworld was just, it was such an innovative show. It was very sad that the the climate of the time didn't really support it. We were like right in between science fiction being popular,
Right.
and it was kind of the show was just so good, and the episodes that were kind of drafted out, that were never fully scripted and never made. I mean, there were so many really good shows. I was very sad that we didn't get picked up. That was probably one of the more disappointing, because I thought the show had so much potential.
Right.
It was really fun. It was a lot of work, but that's when, just working. My gosh, I think my longest day I put in like a 26-hour day there.
Wow.
It's crazy.
And then at that same time, another really fun, well, it's a made-for-TV movie, but Midnight Hour is such a fun movie, and I love the scene too where you're slow dancing with Peter DeLuise in front of his car.
That show was fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
We filmed almost exclusively at night.
Yep.
So a month of living, getting up at 3 or 4 in the afternoon and then going to bed at 5, 6 in the morning. The cast and the crew were just the best. Without exception, such delightful people to work with. LeVar and Sherry and Dee Dee and Peter, and I mean, just, oh my gosh, it was always hilarious. There was always somebody cutting up something fierce on something. There were so many comedians who were part of the show in various supporting roles who were just, it was great. It was really fun. We just had, it felt like family. We had a good time. There was no, sometimes I heard so many tales of shows with big casts like that where pretty much, no one's top of the list, everyone's in alphabetical order, yada, yada, yada. And that there can be real, friction, and there was none. Mm-hmm. It was just a lot of people having a grand old time, knowing it was silly but fun, but also had a thread of gold, of a really lovely story through the center of it.
Right. And did you stay friends with Peter or Dee Dee or anybody else that was kind of younger?
For a period of time, it's one of those things that it like kind of, there was no such thing as this.
Right.
There was no such thing as cell phones. So it was kind of hard. You could kind of, a lot of times, keep track of someone for a while, and then it, lasts for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely see Dee Dee on interviews quite a bit.
Yeah.
On auditions, and she's a sweetie.
Did you ever get to meet Michelle?
Did not, no.
Okay.
I've heard she's fabulous, though. I've heard she's really great.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to ask, when I was asking you about roles that you might have gotten, were you ever aware of if there was one other main actress that you seemed to always be up against when it came to auditions or getting things, if you can recall that at all?
Yes, and it'll come to me, but it might take a little while.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was kind of a joke between me and, what the heck was that? It'll come to me. It's been such a long time.
Okay.
It's funny. It's just like, that was another lifetime. It was a fun lifetime, but it was another lifetime.
You're right. And then, 86, you were on, was it very memorable for you being on Airwolf?
Airwolf was great. The babies, because because when they're that young, they always use twins.
Mm.
The babies and I were like, the babies were not big on pretty much anyone, not even their mom necessarily holding them. They were kind of squirmy, except for Ernie.
Mm-hmm.
He would pick up the babies and they'd be fussing. He'd pick up a baby and that incredible face of his, and he would just like, and he'd make all these faces. And the babies would just instantly grin and coo.
Yeah.
And that was a very generous and kind man.
Mm-hmm.
He was really wonderful.
Did you get to interact much with Jan Michael too?
Yeah, Jen and I did some, did quite a few scenes together actually.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of driving here and there on the Paramount backlot, and that's always funny because it's a lot of just sitting there, and like, so it's sitting there, and then I have the walkie-talkie and like an earpiece, and I'm like, and they're finally into me, and I'm like, Jan, go. And he like peels out, we rip down the dirt road, and then back up because it's not perfect. Stuff like that. It's so silly.
Right.
There's a lot of silly stuff in the film industry. That's all I have to say. Yeah, Jan was great. Jan was funny. I actually have, Jan brought in a bushel of oysters one Friday evening, and I still have a little scar right here where I missed shucking an oyster and stabbed myself.
Wow.
So yeah, those are the things that stick with you. So yeah, that's my Jan Michael Vincent oyster scar.
Do you remember much about, I think it was just a small part, but when you were in Monster in the Closet?
Yeah, that was a really small part, and that was super, super early on, and that's when I realized I was my big like, oh, girlfriend, you actually need to start paying attention to what you're doing. This is a job. I think it was my third. I know it took quite a while for it to come out, but it might have been the third or fourth job that I actually did. It's way early there with like Chained Heat and T.J. Hooker and all those.
Yep.
And so there's the little script. So I read the script, but I didn't really understand what I was supposed to do. Mm. So it had a reference in there to Ethel Merman, and so it's yada yada. I'm supposed to be sitting there in the mirror like Ethel Merman. I'm like, yeah, and I didn't. I did such a bad job. That was like my biggest failure as a job. And I got on set and I had no idea because I didn't have a theater arts background, and I should have gone to the library and looked up Ethel Merman and rented a record and gone to the record store and listened to it.
Yeah.
And so the director was like coaching me through it, and he shouldn't have had to do that. That was my bad.
Yeah.
I think we pulled it off, but funny movie. The script was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually think I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably there's a pile of things that I've never seen that I did.
Right.
I actually didn't have a television until 1986. So I would have to I'd go to people's houses or so I didn't see a lot of the stuff I did.
And I know that Monster in the Closet is not like a serious horror movie, but were you ever offered or rejected any roles in like serious horror films too?
I'm pretty sure I auditioned for Nightmare.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure. I kind of remember that in all the chunks of films that, all the auditions you go on. And then, like I said, for 10 years, I pretty much worked an average of 1 in 4 days.
Yep.
And then, when you don't have those days, it would be a matter of just ping-ponging from audition to audition.
Yeah.
Especially in the early days. So it's, and that's, again, there's no cell phones and stuff like that. So you have a wardrobe in your car, you have makeup, so you can change your look and your, everything about yourself at any given point. And it's just running from point A to point B. So a lot of, auditions and all that were really were a blur.
Mm.
Oh, I know what movie. That was a big one, was the Milius, Red Dawn.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Red Dawn. He actually, he annoyed me. He said, you have very sibilant S's. And I said, I realized that because I overcame a serious speech impediment when I was a child.
Oh.
I said, but it's better to have sibilant S's than to lisp. I don't think he had quite as much humor in my little snarky comeback as I did.
Mm-hmm. Was that just with Red Dawn? Was that just did you get very far in the audition process, or was it just?
Oh, that conversation was with John Milius.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So yeah, so it went along, and it was like, it was one of those ones. I was like, you didn't really need to go there, dude.
Right.
But, yeah. So that was another one of those big films. But again, it's probably the only reason I remember it is because he annoyed me.
Yeah. And were you friends? Were you good friends with anybody who was kind of just starting to? I guess in general, if you were friends with any other actors that were around your same age that you hung out with.
It was kind of on and off. It seems like, we'd hang with, you kind of hung with whoever you did your last film with for a while, and then until you both get too busy and one of you disappears for a while, in work mode. Like I said, I've maintained a friendship, kind of a long distance, but we make sure we touch base a couple times a year with Judd Nelson. There was quite a while after I did a turnaround in Norway that was hanging out with Ramon Estevez.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Ramon Sheen. And Renee was actually somebody who I would see on interviews all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And who I really got along great with her. So it was kind of fun because when I was happened to be hanging out with Ramon, I saw a lot more of Renee. And then I have to say, one of my favorite people is an actor by the name of Kevin Wickstead.
Okay.
And he's classically trained. He was trained in Chicago. And he was my savior when I was understudy for Come Back Little Sheba at the Los Angeles Theater Center. Mm. And I was understudying Jamie Gertz.
Oh, okay.
And it was Tyne Daly and Charlie Hallahan.
Okay.
So really and Michael Grady, I think, was in it. Really good cast. And so I'd never done a play before. And so Ray Danton was the director. Incredible director. And so I started going, every day to the rehearsals, watching everybody do their thing. And Kevin's like, what you need to do? You've got to learn everything. And I'm like, well, I'm not even supposed to start doing, understudy rehearsal till next week. He's just let's learn it. And we basically like went through a very, very good portion of a bottle of Jack Daniels. And he played every other role. And we did every scene, and he drilled it into me until we were laughing hysterically and could do the whole thing backwards and forwards. And on the very first day of previews, which I had actually told them, hey, I didn't have to be there. I said, I'm not going to be there, but I'd been there every day. I'm going to a concert. I told them that a few days before, and they're like, okay. And I got a call at 10 in the morning, and they said, Jamie's sick, you're going on. And I was like, what? And they're like, I said, ha 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 ha, you're kidding, because, I'm not coming in today, so you're giving me a hard time. They're like, no, Jamie's sick, you're going on, you have to be here in 2 hours so we can get you fitted in the wardrobe. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I got there, and poor Ray the director was so upset, because he's just looking at his first night of previews, now what's going to happen. And he said, okay, you'll be on book. And I'm like, I think I can do it. And he's like, what? I said, I'm pretty sure I can do it. And he's like, okay. And Tyne and Charlie they're like, if you get into trouble, just look at one of us and smile. And I got through the entire play except for one line just left me, and I was with Tyne, and I kind of like stuttered to the end at the one line, and I just kind of looked at her as I was finishing the line and gave her a big grin, and she like said her line, cued me for my line, and like wrapped it all and put me right back where I needed to be. And it worked. And Kevin Wickstead, wherever you are, it would have been such a different experience, for the audience too. How disappointing to pay your good money and want to go see a play with these, people like Tyne Daly and Charlie Hallahan were so amazing, and to have somebody sitting there off a script, that would have been very disappointing for everybody. Right. And so it was a really good experience. I actually ended up doing that for well over a month. Jamie only stayed maybe another week. She didn't stay much past the opening night, and then that's when she got Less Than Zero.
Oh, okay.
So she took off to do Less Than Zero, and I moved into the main role, and then I ended up leaving probably a couple weeks before it was done to do Shattered Innocence.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's an interesting story. I was just
that was a busy month. Whew.
Yeah, right. I was just thinking about when I asked you about if there was someone that you were always up against. Was it somebody else that was blonde too? Because there's Kelly Preston, Catherine Mary Stewart, Cynthia Gibb.
Cynthia Gibb was one.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Who was the other one? I'm just having a blank on it. It was funny, but was it Cynthia Gibb? Because I remember that there was a couple times when I was in contract negotiations when I was threatened, when you get threatened with other actresses, where they're basically like, well, we can just hire. And you're like, fine. And then you give in.
I think, well, yeah, at that same time, I think Virginia Madsen was up and coming a lot too.
She was... she's someone who I'd see around, but we didn't. I don't think we came up necessarily in the same room very often. But one thing I have to say is those actresses when with very few, I can't really think of anyone who actually ended up going on in the industry and did anything so those are the few exceptions I'm talking about right now.
Yep.
The really, it's not, at least the women who I was in there all the time with, it was never snarky. It was always friendly. It was always,
that's good.
Wishing everybody luck, even though, because if I don't get this one, I'm going to get the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do get this one, she's going to get the next one because I'm going to be doing this one. And that's how it works out.
Right.
And so to be anything other than kind and supportive, I think really you just would shoot yourself in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no, I'll go back to Airwolf in a minute. So there's no reason to be like mean-spirited or to be, I mean, your competitiveness should be from the time they shut the door behind you and you're reading your lines to the time you walk back out the door. It should never be in the time in the waiting room, because then that's just a waste of everybody's time and energy.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't remember anyone. This is Centra. Say hi, Centra. Then I'm going to kick her off the desk. Hi.
Sure.
Out. She likes to stand on my computer. So no one who, I think the only people who were snarky and nasty never went anywhere. They were out of there really quick. And people know really fast. I mean, you get a reputation really quickly go away. Okay. Airwolf. Because this is so funny. Which has nothing to do with Airwolf other than one of the things that I always got along great with crews. Get along well with the cast, but I usually tended to hang out more with a lot of the crew. And so the crew of Airwolf asked me if I would join them, and I ended up joining them a couple times to be on their paintball team.
Oh.
So I was a really good sniper. So I liked climbing trees, and I'd be down there with my paintball sniping. Well, one of the times we went out, we played moonlighting. And there's a couple of us who had Bruce Willis like down on the ground, and he was flailing around, and you end up doing one of these with the, when you pull your body up and try to shoot at somebody, and he ended up shooting himself in the foot.
Oh.
It was hilarious.
Oh yeah, that's
everyone gave him a very hard time for that for many, many hours. Just that was a random thought.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, yeah, okay. So did you have more fun, do you think, working on Family Ties or Growing Pains?
They both had their moments. So Mike Fox was just like such an amazing guy, and really like so intently focused, and just really sweet. And that whole cast was absolutely a family. And I was really fortunate because I actually was working towards the end of the year, so I got to go to the big Christmas party and all that grand old stuff. Growing Pains was a whole other dynamic, but again, very much a family. And I ended up becoming pretty good friends with Alan Thicke. And actually would hang out with him and a few other people every now and then when he was doing Thick of the Night, and do just like kind of throwing skit ideas around. So that was a really funny thing. But it was kind of hilarious because I remember one time going with Kirk and Alan and a couple other people, and we all went to some hockey thing, because they were the hockey nuts. And I remember somebody from one of the rags came up and was like, "So is there a thing between like you and Kirk Cameron?" And I was like, okay, he's like 15 and I'm like 22. I don't think so. I mean, I didn't say anything. I just kind of like went, you know, because that was the whole thing, is you'd always go, oh, you never know. You'd never like fast to anything, no matter what. But it was so funny to me because like, no, he's a charming young man, but that would not be okay.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever date anybody that was I don't know, like, oh, you know, okay, never anybody else in the industry?
Never. Oh, I guess for just a little itty bit, I had kind of a set romance that lasted a little bit longer after turnaround, but
Okay.
it was very kind of lightweight, nothing serious.
Mm-hmm.
No, I never really tended to hang out with actors that terribly much.
Mm-hmm. And this is going back to after you and Judd became friends. Did you? Well, it's kind of tied into it. Did you ever get the chance to audition for any of the like Brat Pack movies?
I don't think I did, actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to remember back, and I don't think he actually got what he got the Breakfast Club while we were doing Making the Grade, though.
Okay.
He flew out for it, and he's like, I think this is going to be pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I know that you were brought on to Making the Grade later, but because I know originally, I don't know if you ever heard this before, but originally Jim Carrey was supposed to be in Judd Nelson's role.
Wow, that would have been a different movie.
Yeah, right.
I didn't know that. That just tells you I just showed up. Showed up and did my job.
Mm-hmm. And I just have to ask, because I've asked this to the other couple actresses I've interviewed at the same time. Did you ever audition for Grease 2?
First, say that one more time.
Did you ever audition for Grease 2?
I did not. No.
Okay. Because there's kind of like this long. I always see it posted on stuff, and one of the other women I asked, because I interviewed Catherine Murray Stewart too, and she auditioned for it. There's like a long-standing thing that everybody who was young in Hollywood auditioned for Grease 2 when it was, because it was such a huge deal at that time.
I think it was. I don't know if that was. When was that actually made?
82.
So that was actually before. So I got my very, very first role in December of 82.
Okay.
So that was actually just before my time.
Okay.
And I probably signed with my agent in October, maybe, of 82. So that was I didn't even have my SAG card until
right.
until beginning of 83.
So yeah, moving ahead to, I do want to talk to you about Shattered Innocence, because that's a really powerful emotional role. Obviously, I showed it to my mom too. We watched it together after I already saw it, because we live in Minneapolis, and I know the woman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How difficult was that for you to step into that?
It was definitely very, very hard to examine her life, because it was such a train wreck. And she had so much potential, and I think was just kind of jerked in so many ways, and had just just flat out bad luck on a few things, and then just, you know, having an addictive personality and having an abundance of an incredibly addictive drug around her all the time. I mean, it was definitely it was definitely heartbreaking to research. And there's some things that I think I really succeeded on, and there's some things that I look back and I kind of cringe and wish I would have, just had a little more. It's like I feel like at the very end of doing that film, I like really finally developed my chops, and some things I'm like, oh, I wish I could redo that, but it was definitely challenging, and but get an incredibly supportive cast and crew. Sandy Stern, the director, is just, I mean, he's just fabulous. I think that the kind of craziest thing on that happened was my right after it aired, when it aired the first time, my mom called me absolutely freaking hysterical. Oh. She was just like, you could watch it. And it hurt her to watch it.
Yeah.
It was, she didn't like seeing that person with my face on it. And that really upset her. But in some ways, I mean, wow, that's a huge compliment too.
Right.
Yeah, it was hard. I think it's especially hard because, I'm a pretty tough person as far as I'm very careful about being taken advantage of, and very aware of that potential in people. And so, it's kind of hard to look at a character and just be kind of disappointed in them too. Just saying, oh, honey, just don't do this. The back of my head saying that. And, at the same time, I'm watching her spiral down this road.
What was the hardest part in the movie for you to do too? I was going to guess it was the suicide, but
the suicide was a hard scene, but that scene I actually had that in my mind better. I think that some of the hardest scenes for me were actually the big fights with Melinda Dillon, the big mother-daughter fights.
Yeah, right.
Those were, and I think part of it was just struggling to kind of find. She was so fantastic, to find that place of really that hysterically butting heads. I think those were, in some ways, the most difficult.
And was that also, were you in the 80s? Were you in relation to playing someone with the cocaine addiction? Were you offered a lot of drugs back then, or did you just?
Absolutely. Drugs were extremely prevalent. So you'd see them, they were kind of, depending on where you were, you'd see them everywhere. And it was kind of ridiculous. I managed to dodge that bullet, because I did watch a lot of friends really go down the rabbit hole, and just with some very, very serious narcotic addiction problems.
Yeah.
And that's hard to watch too. And that's something that if I would have had any drift in that direction before doing Shattered Innocence, that certainly would have stopped me in my tracks, because just researching her and how easy it was for that to happen, I think was really cautionary.
Right. And I thought it was, like, the first time I saw it, I thought it was really cool that you were working with Nadine Vanderveld, because I think that she's underrated for sure too.
She's so underrated. That woman is so underrated. She is, number one, she's so unbelievably smart.
Mm.
She plays the piano like a dream. she's a really wonderful writer. I mean, she's just, yeah.
Mm.
That is a cool woman. And she's so pretty.
Mm. Right.
In a much more interesting way than I was at that time. You know, I had the kind of cute blonde thing, and she just was so like, oh, so beautiful.
And then after that, I know you were in an episode of Murder, She Wrote in '87, and then you were in one in 1990, and that was your last role working on that show. Was that also really fun for you?
It was really fun. Again, she's amazing. I tend to confuse the two, like who was on what one and what my character was. But with each of them, there was just like this parade of people who I was going like, wow, I'm working with you. You know, because I definitely, you know, I didn't have a problem being like a little bit starstruck with, right. You know, from like when I was a kid. I mean, all these people, like this is kind of a funny one, is Hardcastle and McCormick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Brian Dennehy. I mean, come on, Brian Dennehy. You know, I mean, because he was like, when I was a little kid, I'm like, he was so cool. He was in all these great things that I absolutely loved, and so, you know, and then just show after show, I get to work with these people who were like really cool, mm-hmm. and who I had grown up with. So I was always like, yeah. You know, my first role ever was with Captain Kirk.
Yeah, right.
What could be better than that?
And what prompted the choice for you to, or what prompted the decision for you to leave acting?
You know, it was funny because I actually, I'll step back for a second. And when I did Turnaround, I was in Norway for really a good chunk of the year. I got there in January, and I didn't end up leaving. I just hung out for a while, and I didn't end up leaving until I think the beginning of September. And so a big chunk of the time while I was there, me and the second assistant camera would go to drawing classes. Like, hey, you want to come with me to these? I go to these classes a couple times a week. And because in Norway, they actually work from like 9 to 5. Yeah. It's crazy. They don't do that here. We had 2 weeks off for Easter vacation. I was like, what? So, anyway, so he's like, do you want to go to these drawing classes? And they were figure classes. So they had the live model, usually nude. Yeah. And so I just started drawing like crazy. And I've been drawing my whole life. I love art. I've always been an art fanatic. And for some reason, I never thought of it as being like potentially a career or something to do other than just playing. So I did that constantly. And then, so not too long after, it's right about the time that Shattered Innocence aired, I actually dug out some old journals. And I was just kind of leafing through the journals, and the journals were basically from the ones I happened to grab were through the time I was doing Come Back Little Shiva, and then the filming of Shattered Innocence. Just that probably 3-month period. And I was reading it, and it kept saying, oh, this is so great, and this happened and that happened. But I wish I could just take a break and do some painting. Really wish I could be painting. And it kept over and over. And I looked at that and I started thinking, you just had 3 of the best months in your career. You did an equity show, at a big LA house with time dealing Charlie Hill, and you starred in the movie of the week where you're not in 2 scenes in the whole stupid thing, all, and you keep whining that you want to be drawing and painting and doing all this. So that should tell you something,
right?
And I also remember I got a lot of flack from when I did Sam's Son, and Mike Landon Jr., and I can't remember his friend's name, but they were doing like a documentary of the making of Sam's Son that Michael Landon was directing.
Oh.
And so, at one point, he's like interviewing me, and he's like, so something about acting. And I'm like, I don't really think of myself as much of an actor. I think of myself as an artist. And they both kind of like jumped on my throat about how pretentious that was. And I'm like, wait, what? Oh, you thought I meant like, I'm not an actor, I'm an artiste. And I meant, no, I don't think of myself as somebody who works in front of the camera. I think of somebody who does this and scribbles.
Right.
And like they totally misunderstood where I was coming from. And it was kind of a blow, because I expected myself to be taken at like my value, and I expected, rather than to be somebody jumped down my throat like, what's wrong with you, to say, well, what do you mean by that? In which case I would have said, oh, because I paint.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm like, I don't know how I feel. So I called my manager, Monica Rosenberg at that time. And I said, you know what? I really need to see you. I really need to have lunch. And so she was actually, remember when I told you way back when I got my first agent at the agency called The Company?
Yeah.
She was one of the agents there.
Oh, wow.
And then when the company kind of went through some upheaval, she left to become a personal manager. So she was with me the whole time. Literally from day one, Monica was with me.
Yeah.
And, and not to be, this can sound kind of gauche, but I did represent like a chunk of her income. So for me to just go, I'm done, I quit. That takes, I have to give that some pause, because, she represents 10 people. I might be, whatever percentage of her income I am. And you have to be responsible for the people who've been with you forever. And like, Monica, we sat down for lunch, and I'm like, I kind of think I want to quit. And she's like, oh my gosh, I do too.
Oh.
I was like, okay, this is it. And she had been early in her career, she had been in fashion in New York. She wanted to go back into fashion. And I'm like, if I was questioning it anyway, and now the person who I've made this journey with is not wanting to be there either, I thought, you know what? It's time.
Right.
So I did my last, I'd already done my last couple shows. And then applied to college, got into college, and after that I did a couple more shows with Inside Space, which is a it was a sci-fi channel show. And that I was there like the roving host there. So that was really fun to do those last couple things.
And do you have probably like the final question is, do you have a answer as to what you'd want your legacy to be?
Legacy. I don't think I did enough for a legacy. I mean, I guess that there's two things. There's two things. So number one that I touched on earlier was that no way, no how, no matter what, I'd walk on the set 100% prepared, good to go, and was always friendly, professional, and made sure I did my job to the best I could, and made the people around me as comfortable as possible. That's number one. I think that was important. But the other thing, and this is kind of funny, and I got more than one job I was hired on, and you have to listen to this whole thing, because what they said is, "Do you know why you got this job?" And I'm like, "No." One was a commercial, and the other one was, I can't remember what show it was. Maybe it was My Camera, but it was said, "You got this job because when you came in here and you auditioned, you just didn't give a shit if you got the job or not." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, "No. It doesn't mean that you didn't do a good job and but you didn't need it. You obviously wanted it, but if you didn't get it, we weren't worried about you going and jumping off a cliff or something."
Right.
It was like, oh. And I think that that's something important too, is as an actor to just focus on your best day and the best you can do and the best you can be. And then let everything go from there. Because there's always going to be somebody smarter, somebody prettier, somebody hunkier, somebody who's more related to somebody, you know, and so what you get is what you get, and then enjoy it. Because it's a crazy industry. It's like going to the circus and getting to ride the elephant. I mean, it's, you know, when you're doing it, it's absolutely fabulous, and there's nothing else like it. But it also can't be your basis for being. You can't make it your be all end all. That has to be internal, and that has to be out of your own heart and your own goodness. And it shouldn't completely complete you to get a job. And I think that that's what they meant when they said you don't give a shit. You don't give a shit. I always gave a shit, absolutely, on every little bit, except for I didn't need a job to complete me. That was already done. Right. It was just a bonus and some money.
I guess I haven't asked you this too, but I like to just ask actors and musicians, whatever, what do you think your personal, I don't know, most craziest or weird story is from your career?
I'm trying to think what a crazy. There's so many like little weird things, but one. This is just a silly one, but I liked it because it just showed the kind of camaraderie and razzing that went on any set. So, do you know Midnight Hour, there's a really, it's kind of a very weird scene in the film, and it has an 8-second fade where the ding dings, the railroad crossing things come down, and then Lee like does this like fade and like kind of comes behind me, and the lights are flashing, and it's just very kind of surreal moment in the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, that happened because we couldn't go on filming for the evening because a train just like something went wrong with the train, and it just like something blew somewhere, and the whole train just like shudders to a stop like right across the whole front of where we're filming.
Oh. Huh.
So they got the ding dings were still there, but aside from that, it's just like everyone's just like, what the heck? Well, moments before that happened, I was on the train track putting pennies on the train track because I wanted, how you flatten a penny on the train track? Well, the entire crew decided for the rest of the night to give me shit about how I broke the train. Because I put the pennies down, all of a sudden it's like,
wow.
Okay, guys. It's very silly, but I think that's emblematic of the kind of like really fun relationship that I had with most of the people I worked with.
Right. Well, thank you. This was fun for me.
Good. I'm glad. Say hi to your mom.
Well, yeah, and I'll be sure to send it to you once I have it uploaded to YouTube.
Well, thank you, and good luck to you. And I see that you're in the for acting and voiceover film is what I saw.
Oh, I went to school for voice acting locally here. So that's sort of my dream job. Yeah.
Honestly, that is something that I would really love to do still.
Oh, yeah.
I think that voice work is so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And good luck to you, because it's definitely cool.
Thanks. Yeah, it was nice. I'm glad. Well, I've been friends with you on Facebook for a long time. I just thought of doing this now for some reason.
Hey, now is the time to kind of dig in and go, all right, I'm stuck here. What can I do?
Right.
It's definitely it's been an adventure. But I hope that you stay safe, and we can get through this crazy time together soon.
Yeah, you too. Thanks. I'll see you later.